Shalom, shalom. Mm, Shalom, everyone. Bear with me. I can't see comments. Just give me type a 1, please, in the comment section if you can hear me. Where the comments gone? All right. Okay, you can hear me. Great. Sorry, I tried a different setup today, and it hasn't been as productive as I would have liked. Just bear with me. Excellent, excellent. Greetings, everyone. Greetings to you all. I pray you've all had a blessed week and are looking forward to the Shabbat and all the blessings that brings. We give the Most High thanks and praise for his mercies, for getting us through yet another week in the midst of all the turmoil that is going on outside. Just bear with me for a second, everyone. I just need to get these comments up on the screen properly, because they come up and then they disappear, so I can't quite see what everyone's typing. There we go, that's better. Right. How many people do we have online? We've got a few. Okay, that's okay. So yeah, greetings, everyone. There's not such a set format today. Just a few things really I want to talk about. Obviously, we are in that Passover season, so I want to talk a little bit about Passover, find out what people are doing to celebrate the feast, those of us who are, and what day you're celebrating it on. I just want to get some feedback from you. And then I want to talk a little bit about the 3 days of darkness, because it is in the season of Passover, according to what we've studied. So I want to just talk about that and find if there are any sort of underlying feeling from the group as to if we're any closer to this particular event. Obviously we are closer, because every day that goes past and it doesn't happen, we know we're a step closer. But just to see how people feel about it. One or two things that I've read comments elsewhere that I just want to kind of maybe go through and give some food for thought in that area. So yeah, the theme is really the Passover season. the first biblical month, which we are in now for a couple of days. So just want to really talk about that, and any other things that may come up. It's not a teaching as such. I'm not going to be using any slides today. Just be going through the word on my Bible, and you guys can obviously follow along if there's anything we need to clear up. So I think we'll make a start and other people will join us. Sorry, I've seen in the comments somebody said one low. Miss D, are you saying that you can hear me but the volume is low? And what about everybody else? His lips, my heart. Shalom, my brother. Shalom to you too. Loud and clear, so you can hear me. So, is the mic audio okay, everyone? Or do I need to adjust something? Okay, it's better now. All right, great. Okay, that's fine. I think that's rectified. The camera may not be as great because I'm having some trouble with my lighting, so please ignore the light in the background. But I'm not overly fussed about the presentation as I mean, it's good to have good presentation and that, but I'm more interested in the content because ultimately that's why I do this, is to get the content out in terms of what goes into the messages. That's what's more important to me rather than all the props, although it is good to be professional. So that's something I probably need to learn. Anyway, shalom to you all. Thank you for joining. I only put this feed up, I think, in the early hours of the morning in the UK. So it hasn't even been 24 hours. So not maybe a lot of people had noticed to say that I would be going live, but obviously it'll be available for replay. As I said already, there's not a set format. It's just that because we are in the season of Passover, Passover is fastly approaching. Just want to talk a bit about that and anything that might come with it. As I mentioned, the 3 days of darkness, which I've read quite a few comments and looked at one or two things where quite a few brethren throughout the world really are having, feelings or dreams, visions, that this event is approaching. And we know that the season, according to biblical understanding, is in the Passover season as it was in the past. And we believe in Ecclesiastes 1 and 9 that the things of the past will repeat in the future. So every time we approach this season, we need to be on our guard, we need to be aware, and we need to be prepared. And if you prepare and nothing happens, then you haven't lost anything. If anything, you've gained, because you would have done your physical and spiritual preparation, which we'll talk about more. And the physical preparation can be used in other ways at other times. But if you don't prepare and then something does happen, then there's no going back. And that's the whole reason why it's good for us to be aware of these things and to do what we can when we are in that season. So we're in that season now. Whether it's going to happen this year or next year, or if that remains to be seen. But when we get in the season, I believe we should be have our loins girded, as it says in Exodus 12, and be ready. We should be prepared. But that's spiritually as much as physically, because spiritual is always the key that comes first, and then the physical manifests. But we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. So, yes, we are now in the first biblical month of the year for the last few days. And obviously we are approaching next week, the 14th day, potentially. Now, one thing about the calendar is, although we understand the dates, as in Passover takes place on the 14th day of the first biblical month, but where we've been under this pagan calendar that we've been using, a Babylonian calendar, it means that we don't actually know how those two synchronize. We don't know what date the 14th day of the first biblical month actually is. And you'll see many different calendars. I know some people have it down as, I believe, April the 5th. Some have it down as April the 6th. In fact, put in the comments if you have any other understandings with regards to when you believe that Passover is, i.e. the 14th day of the first biblical month. There are a few different things that I've seen. I've even seen some ministries celebrating it a week later. And to be perfectly honest, nobody really knows which one is correct 100% because we are under this Gregorian calendar, which the Babylonian times have mixed things up. So we don't fully understand. We just know that we're in the season. And because we're in the season, obviously we prepare the best way we can. And whenever we honor that feast, for those of us who do keep that feast and who do celebrate the Passover, we have to, be convicted that we are doing it to the best of our ability and the best of our knowledge. That may not be exactly Yah's timing because only Yah knows the true calendar and the true dates. And that's something that I'm sure he will reveal to us one day. But we just do the best we can with what we've got at this moment in time. So yeah, as I said, I know it's many ministries are celebrating it on the 5th of April, sundown, which I believe is Wednesday. And some doing it a day after, and then I know one or two doing it the following week. So it's just to be aware of that. Just have a quick look at the comments. 5th of April, night to be evening on the 6th of first day of unleavened bread, 6th of April, A similar thing that I've heard, 14th of, I've heard from, again, thank you to Tiana. That's the same. I've heard very, very similar dates to what you've just mentioned in the comments. And that's the thing. We don't, nobody can say categorically that they know the correct date. You just cannot. So we just do the best we can with what we've got. And then by faith, we trust that the Most High will receive and understand and direct us to, how to perform the ceremony and when, because that's the key thing. So, yes, we are in the first biblical month now. And when we enter the first biblical month, as per Leviticus chapter 23, the season of the Most High's festivals begin. And obviously Passover is the first one, and it's fastly followed by the days of unleavened bread with first fruits included in that. And these things sort of come upon us quite quickly at this time of year. So it's good that we sort of understand these feasts and know what they mean, and it's good to practice them, but nobody can do them to the full potential of how they are supposed to be done. That is something that nowadays, especially living in the Western society, things are so different to what they did in ancient times. So we just do it to the best of our ability, the best of our understanding, but we ask the Most High for direction so that we do things, i.e. on the right dates, the right times, as he directs us to. Because that's what it's all about, really. It's all about trying to honor the Most High in the best way we can, based on the information he has given us. And over time, some things have been taken out, so there's a lack of understanding. There's some other feasts that would help us to actually know the timing of the calendar better, and we don't find those in the canonized Bible. So sometimes these things do prevent us, I suppose, from doing everything perfectly, but we just try with what we've got. And we don't always have to be in agreement with the dates and the specific times from a Gregorian calendar point of view, because we can't. But at the end of the day, when your heart is in the right place and you're spiritually prepared, I believe the Most High honors that, because he knows you're doing things with the best intention and not just doing it as a tick box exercise. And that's what I think is important. So, where will I start? I suppose let's talk a bit about Passover itself. Now, I don't want to go into um, the historic side of it because we should by now know that the story in Exodus and the first journey out. And what I will do is I will leave links in the description for all the recent teachings on the topic, so that if you haven't seen those, obviously you can just link to those and then get some more in detailed understanding. But I don't so much want to go into that. What I want to talk about more is the fact that because we are now in that season, I want to find out how people actually celebrate the feast. What do they do, and the reasons for doing it. Because if we understand that, then it means that we are doing something that is not a ritual, because a ritual is something that you just do for the sake of doing. We're doing something that has meaning. And if we understand the meaning behind what we're doing, those of us who celebrate Passover, it actually renews your relationship, if you will, with Messiah, who's the one that keeps you, because Passover is only able to be done in the correct manner from a spiritual perspective because of what he did, because of his sacrifice. It's what gives us the renewed hope to know that we're in covenant with him, and that one day at the appointed time, his believers, because of his sacrifice, will be perfected, and perfected in the true sense of the word, that the Spirit will give us, the Ruach will give us that perfection at that appointed time. So it's important for us to recognize, why we are keeping Passover, and what it is about Passover that gives us that hope of a renewed covenant. I think that's quite important to understand. So the first question I'll put out there and see, give you some time to put your responses through, is um, how many people in the group actually keep Passover in terms of year in, year out? Just put it in the comments very briefly, and I'll give you some time to do that, because I just want to have a bit of an understanding as to people who do that. We just keep an eye on the comments at the same time. Unfortunately, we have Passover days wrong. Yeah, as I said, there are no conclusive uh, dates aligning to the calendar that we currently operate on. It's just not possible. We just do not know. We know the dates that the ancients kept it, because it's in the scriptures, clear as day. But we don't know how those dates translate to the calendar that we use today. And these are the things that, Hasatan has done sneakily over time. And when it says in Daniel chapter 12 that, this man of sin who will shortly come on the scene will seek to change times and laws and seasons, in fact, Daniel chapter 7, sorry. Um, I mean, that is something that has already happened. It is happening and it is going to happen. So these are things that are deliberately being done so that we won't have this complete alignment, complete synchronization as a body. Because, as I say, nobody actually knows when the 14th day of the first biblical month falls. Nobody can truly say they know when that date is. Even with the best intentions in the world that we have, we just can't know. So yes, there is going to be quite a bit of people out of sync when it comes to that. But what we should all be in sync with is the reasons why we are doing it and what it means. Not so much the actual date that we keep it on, because that synchronization is not possible under this false calendar that we've been forced to use. Um, so just having a quick read through the comments. Lorenzo Harris, this is the first year for me. Praise Yah, hallelujah. It's good that you've come into that understanding. Um, Real Samantha Star usually celebrate it during the springtime, March, April. Okay, I'm not sure of the correct date, but to honor observing it as a biblical feast. However, spring in South Africa, September. Okay. Simply positive. This will be my first time keeping a Passover. I'm really looking forward to hearing how others celebrate it. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Since 2008. Wow. A long time. That's a long time. Good. That's good. Okay. So I think it's fair to say there's a mixture. Some people first time, a few people been doing it for a while. I think for me it is maybe my eighth one or ninth one. So somewhere in the middle. Um, but I think the key thing with Passover is even though some people may not have kept it before, but the if they've understood Messiah and his mission, then I would assume that you would have a good understanding of what Passover is, although you may have the old understanding, i.e., Exodus 12, because that was said to be done as a memorial to commemorate that forever. And at the time when the ancient Yasharelites were doing these things, they wouldn't have known that the reason they were doing it then was going to be renewed, and the true reason would be revealed when Messiah would finally come, give his life, his death, his burial, and resurrection. And they wouldn't have known that connection because that was some, I don't know, 1500 years prior to him arriving on the scene, something along those lines. So it's amazing, I think, how the Most High tells us to do something years in advance for a real meaning that's going to come not in your generation or the following generation. And he does that quite often. I believe even when Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, and it's in the Apocrypha. I can't remember the actual book. I think it's in Yasha, could be. But yeah, when he was going to sacrifice Isaac, it was on the 14th day of the first biblical month. And obviously, when he was about to do it, and the angel told him not to do it, and he had the ram caught in the thickets, and he sacrificed that on that same day. So that was a shadow type even before we got all the way into Exodus and the first Passover. So the Most High really repeats those patterns on the same time, the same event, the same pattern, the same time. You see the repetition, which brings me forward to what I was talking about earlier about saying that if we believe that these things happened in the past at these respective times, talking about the 3 days of darkness, it really does show us that we have to be prepared, because if we are in the season, then we are in the season, and we should be looking out for these things to take place. And as I already said, nobody knows the day or hour, but we know the season. We don't know the year, we know the season. And the season is what is more important, because that is what you can look out for. And even though we don't know the day because of the Gregorian calendar, what we do know in terms of the dates is when the pagan festivals are. And with those ones, there are no doubts because we're using a pagan calendar. So we know the dates of the pagan festivals, which mean if we know when they are, and we believe that there could be judgment around that time, we know when that actually is. And I don't think that that's a coincidence that we are able to have that knowledge, although we don't know the Passover date, as in Yah's feast, we know the pagan feast date. So we still have an adequate warning to be able to know that these things are coming up, and to prepare. But before we go on to that, let's talk a bit more about Passover itself. And as I said, I don't want to get too caught up in the dates, how that translates to the Babylonian calendar. I just want to talk about the actual event and how people celebrate it, what they do, and obviously the meaning. So without going back into Exodus 12, um, we know that the true Passover lamb sacrificed his innocent life for humanity. And that is a really important point. You know, it's for humanity. It is definitely for Yasharel. And that is something that we have to fully accept because he was from Yasharel. So he sacrificed his life for his people and their descendants and so on. But he also did it for the world of humanity. When he came, he was sent to the lost sheep of Yasharel, and his ministry was to minister to them. But whenever you saw any Gentile or Samaritan falling under that same category that came to him for something, he dealt with them according to their faith. Be it done unto you according to thy faith. That is how Messiah operated. So we can see that he doesn't discriminate and he's not a respecter of person. If your heart is in the right place, if your faith in him is there, he will receive you. So Passover is for the Yasharelite for sure. But to those who graft themselves into Yasharel, to the ecclesia, then he also shed his blood for them too, because they are part of humanity. They have their free moral agent who has choices and free will, and they can repent just the same way as we can. They're human beings. And I kind of want to make that clear because there are some movements that, you know, have these twisted beliefs, basically. That's what I'll call them, where they think that Messiah only shed his blood for Yasharel. And they therefore exclude other people from wanting to receive that free gift. And it is a gift. So it's really key to understand that that is not the case. And you do need to be grafted into Yasharel to receive from that. That's for sure. You do need to be part of the body of the ecclesia. But if you're grafted in correctly, then his free gift is for you. And you can't and didn't earn it. None of us could ever earn it. It was given freely because of what it says in John 3:16, that Yah so loved the world, Yah so loved his creation, because his creation are the world, that he gave his only begotten son. So that is what we have to understand. And let's not ever let anybody tell us anything about that Messiah only shed his blood for Yasharel, because that doctrine is satanic. I will say that all day long. It's a satanic doctrine. It really diminishes what he did. That was a very, very precious sacrifice, and it diminishes that when you say it was only for Yasharel. But Yasharel are the lost sheep. It's Yasharel that he was sent to be the leader of the nations. Yasharel was supposed to be the example, and the rest of the world were to follow. And we know Yasharel went into idolatry and all sorts of things and were punished duly for that, and still are to this very day. But ultimately, the Most High's plan was to deal with Yasharel first, and then, you know, convert others, the other nation, the heathen, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I just want to make that point because I have seen that quite a lot recently, and it's disturbing in terms of the truth and why Messiah came and shed his blood. And if we think that he only shed his blood for Yasharel and not anyone else, then we are sadly mistaken, and we are not even in right relationship with him. Because if we were in right relationship with him, we would know that one of his key attributes is mercy and compassion. And if somebody comes in humility and truth and seeks him, he will not turn anyone away. So we have to keep that in mind. So yeah, Passover was given to us as a free gift. It was Messiah shedding his blood for humanity that we may be redeemed from the curse of the law that put us under bondage, the law that no human being was ever able to keep. And when I say he redeemed us from the curse of the law, it doesn't mean that the law is done away with and the law has been abolished. No, he's given the law a higher standard. But what it means that being redeemed by the curse of the law is that when the law is broken, there is a penalty, and that penalty is death. The wages of sin is death. So the minute any human being breaks that law only once, you only have to break it once, because if you break one, you break them all. The minute you do that, then you enter the death covenant. And Messiah's sacrifice means that every human being who receives that sacrifice of truth is able to come away from that death covenant and receive the free gift of eternal life, as it says in Romans 6:23, that the wages of sin is death, but the gift from Yah is eternal life through Yahusha HaMashiach. So that is critical for us to understand. It's a free gift, it cannot be earned. And that is what we do at Passover. We basically renew the covenant we made with him when we said that we would follow him, that we accept his sacrifice, that we are sorry and turn away and repent from those things that we did wrong, whether in ignorance, whether deliberately, whatever. And he washes that slate clean. So every year when this feast comes up, we renew that covenant. We basically are saying to him, I appreciate everything you've done for me and everything you continually do for me. I appreciate you, that you have shed your blood, and now I have the opportunity to be free and to live a fulfilled life in eternity. And we then acknowledge the expensive cost of that gift that no man could buy. We acknowledge what he had to go through, that he had to leave his heavenly realm to come to this earth that we've messed up and live here as a servant, because he came to serve. And he came from a throne to serve on this earth and to serve people, many people that hated him and many people that were the ones behind his death. And so we renew that covenant with him, we show that appreciation, and we then strengthen ourselves going forward for the new biblical season of all the festivals. And that's why the Passover is the first one, because then it gives us that renewed hope for the rest of the seasons and the festivals that follow very shortly after that. So it's really important for us to understand and observe. Now, when we made a decision to follow Messiah and to understand the festivals and the feasts and all of those things that we keep, I think the key thing that we did at that time is we took a leap of faith, because for many of us these were new things, where whether it's your first year today or you've been doing it for years, the first time that you entered that covenant, you may not have had that understanding. I know for me, I didn't. And it was a case of, I knew it was right because in my spirit, I felt it and I saw it in the scriptures. So I knew it was correct, but I didn't have the full understanding. But the more you apply yourself and the more you do it, the better you will have the understanding. The understanding will be given to you by the Ruach of what you're doing. And it will be something that you actually look forward to on a year by year basis. However you celebrate it, wherever you do it, that's not the main issue. The main issue is that you will just grow a love for that season because it's a new season. And this is why sometimes I look around at like the Babylonian system and I think it really does defy logic. It doesn't make any sense, because we get renewed hope during the spring, the beginning of the life cycle. You know, when the clock has now reset and now everything starts to regenerate and blossom again. And that's why this is the first feast, because it gives us that renewed hope that now for the rest of the festival season, we have renewed our covenant and we are going to be strengthened. We're going to be strengthened for the things that are going to come throughout the rest of the year. So it is a celebration. It is a sobering time because we are going through the process of thinking about what it was that Messiah actually did. And I want everyone to think about that for a minute. I want you to think about the fact that this event that took place, it was ordained, it was planned, and it was scripted before even the first man as we know was created, before the foundations of the world was laid. It was already established that on the 14th day of the first biblical month, at some time in the future, that Messiah would shed his blood for humanity. Now think about that for a minute. There were no living souls when that plan by the Most High was established. I think that's deep. That he already knew that this is something he would have to do in order to redeem the creation he hadn't created. He hadn't made man at that point, but he already knew that that's what it was going to cost him if he made man, and he still went ahead and did it. That shows the love that the Father has for his creation. And if you are a parent, you only have to look at your children and see the love you have for your children. And it doesn't compare to that love because it's a different type of love. His love is far more thorough than that love. But to give us an example of the love he has, you just look at your own child and know that that feeling you have for your child is multiplied numerous times as to the feeling that he has for you as an individual and his creation. So it's a really key and important thing to understand, because it just gives, for me personally, it gives me a lot of hope that and encouragement that there's nothing I can't get through. If the Most High was willing to do that for me, if he was willing to do that for me, take on that burden of sacrificing the most precious thing, his son, one day before I was even born, before my forefather Adam was even created, if he's willing to do that for me, then why would he ever leave or forsake me? Why would he not be with me through those times that are going to come up that will be testing times? He will always be there because he made that sacrifice before we were even created. I think that is really deep. And that's the way how I try and think about Passover, that what is about to take place was ordained, and it was definitely a event that the Most High did willingly. The scripture says in Isaiah, when it was talking about Messiah and his trial, being led as a lamb to the slaughter, it said that it pleased him to bruise him. It pleased the Most High. Imagine that. I think that's deep. And these are the things I like to think about when I prepare for the Passover season, because it really does strengthen me. It really does make me think that even the trials and tribulations that I may have had in the past, maybe going through at the time and may be going to have in the future, it makes me realize that none of those things have anything on me, because the Most High did all of that for me. And the way how I like to look at it, and you should do this too, is that if you were the only believer in the world who would ever believe on his message, he would have done the exact same thing. He would have done the exact same thing if you were the only person to ever be converted. That's how much he loves you. That's how much he loves Yasharel. That's how much he loves the Ecclesia. That's how much he loves humanity. So we shouldn't take this season lightly. These are the things we should think about as we prepare to enter into that renewed covenant with him. So think about that and meditate on it, because it really will prepare you for keeping the feast and then the season that we're entering and the things that are going to be happening around that time, if we are in the year. Now, let me have a quick read through the comments, and then I'll give you an explanation of Passover in terms of how I celebrate it, and then you can maybe share with me if you do anything similar. And then I want to talk about the 3 days of darkness, because we're in that season, and regardless or not whether that happens in 2023 or 2024, in some ways it doesn't matter when, because we know that it is going to happen. So sometimes when you know something's going to happen, the timing of it is irrelevant if you are 100% sure that what's going to happen is going to happen. It's like if somebody says to you, don't worry, I've got you, I'm going to look after you, and you 100% believe that, then no matter what's going on at the time, you don't have to concern yourself with that, because you know that this person's word is one and they've said they're going to do this thing, and you trust them. So if we trust the Most High, which I'm sure we all do, we know that his events are going to come to pass when he says that they will. So we should really be encouraged by that, but we should also be prepared. And that's why I want to talk about Passover as a season, and then talk a little bit about the 3 days of darkness. But let me have a quick read through the comments in case I've missed anything. How do I celebrate Passover when I'm the only one in my family who believes? Okay, how do I celebrate the Passover when I'm the only one in my family who believes? I was told to celebrate alone. There will be, I think that's leavened bread. Okay, yeah, it should be leavened bread. Leavening bread in the house and yeast. How do I honor the Passover? Okay, that's a good question. I'll come back to that. Been there before, they'll come around. Okay, I'm going to take the word that you're about to. I mean, that's a good answer, the real Samantha. I'll talk about that a bit as well, but that's a good answer. Does the law mean the 10 Commandments, or also include the restriction on certain foods? Kind of off topic, but maybe we can cover that. Okay. I'm glad to see the dialogue in the chat, because you guys can actually answer some of your own questions, which is important. Okay. So let me very briefly, and this may differ with different people, let me go through my understanding and how I celebrate Passover. Traditionally, when I've been part of a church or an ecclesia, I've kept Passover as with the group, which would usually entail reading the scriptures, the Gospels, especially talking about when Messiah was going to be crucified, and the Last Supper that he kept with his disciples, and how he talked about that they wouldn't understand what they're doing now, but later they would understand. That would be the feet washing, which you find in the book of John, and then receiving the elements of bread and receiving the elements of wine or grape juice, whatever you use. Obviously, as I say, the feet washing with your fellow brethren, and then sometimes there'll be a bit of fellowship and maybe one or two praise and worship songs, or just giving the Most High thanks. Usually it's a solemn event, but it's also a celebration, because it is a feast. It is a festival. It is one of as I said in Leviticus 23, the first festival feast of the Most High. So it should be celebrated. We should commemorate and remember Messiah's death, burial, and resurrection. But there should also be an element of being quite sober and serious with it, because it is a serious event. And as I said, I usually get myself in that mood by thinking about the things I mentioned about Messiah giving up his life for me personally, and would have done it if it was only me to be a believer, and it was ordained and done before the foundations of the world, before man was even created. That was already set in motion that that would happen. So that's how I get my mind in tune for the serious or the severity of the event. And then reading through the scriptures, mainly Matthew chapter 26 is a good chapter to read. Reading also Luke chapter 22 or 23 actually, and also the book of John, where it talks about washing the feet, which is a very good, gives you the understanding of, basically really humbles you if that's something you've ever done. So that those would be the main sort of, I won't say routines, but those would be the practices that I would follow with a group of believers when I was in an ecclesia. If I'm not in an ecclesia or attending an ecclesia at that time, then it would be done with, whoever in my family would observe it, or other brethren and friends that I know, which is what I will be doing this year. So it's best practice and definitely should be celebrated with others. But a good question was asked, that how would you do it? In fact, let me just read that question again. How do I celebrate Passover when I'm the only one in my family who believes? And there was a good answer by the real Samantha that, people will come round, just meditate on the word, eat Passover, give thanks. During 2020, when we had lockdown, I was in that position myself, and I was the only person in my household that was keeping Passover. And the way how I did it, I mean, I did pray about it, but I just felt that the Most High knows all things and he understands the situation. And I felt that he would honor what I could do to keep it the best I could myself, which was, I actually did feet washing of my own feet. And that might sound strange because we wash our own feet, or should wash our own feet every day or all the time. So it's not a new event. But in my mind, the spiritual representation was that if I was with another believer at that time, then they would have washed my feet and I would have washed theirs. But since there wasn't that person there, I saw myself, my 2 feet, as the representation that one is my foot and one is a foot of another believer. And the Most High understands the challenges that we have. He understands that we can't do everything perfectly because of situations and the place that we live in, and the way how they have corrupted things to try and stop us, even in terms of the dates and all of these things. But when your heart is examined, because that's what this season brings, is an examination of the heart. When your heart is examined, he who reads the hearts will honor you according to the place your heart's in. So when you have that humility and that intention to do the best you can with what you've got, no matter how small, I believe that the Most High will honor that. And there will be a time when, through his Ruach, everyone will keep the feast perfectly at the same time, in the right way, on the right day, and there will be no issues with that. And that is to come in the future. But at the moment when we are examined, when our hearts are examined, the Most High will basically honor where our hearts are, even if it is not done, in a orthodox manner, i.e., in the correct manner, it will still be honored. So I think if you have the opportunity to keep Passover, doesn't matter how many believers or how many people you are part of, it doesn't make any difference. If your heart is in the right place, the Most High will honor you. And when talking about things like de-leavening, for example, if you're in a household where people don't keep it and there's loads of leaven everywhere, and you want to start de-leavening but you can't because the produce is not yours, I believe the same principle applies. If you have items that are yours and you start to de-leaven and remove those items, but leave other items that are not yours because it's not your house or other people bought their other products, I believe that the Most High will honor you because he sees your heart and your intention behind it. So it's important not to get too caught up on rituals per se, because rituals are sometimes will detract from the real meaning, but it's the examination of your heart that is the key when it comes to keeping Passover, and when it comes to knowing that what you are doing has a spiritual meaning, which is the fact that you are able to keep that feast because of what Messiah did. And one day, when you are by Yah's grace perfected, when you receive the full ruach that he has put in you, the full portion of that ruach, the true meaning of Passover will come to life, because that will only happen because Passover was made possible by Messiah. And if it wasn't for that, nobody would ever be able to inherit salvation. So the spiritual meaning is what is important, and that is how the Most High works. He examines your heart and he will honor it according to where he finds your heart, your humility. I hope that answers that question, and I believe it was already answered anyway. That was a good job of answering it. But yeah, we have to think about the heart side of things. So we are in that season. We're understanding what Passover means, why we're doing it. We do it to the best of our ability with our fellow believers, whether you're part of a church or an ecclesia, whether it's just your household, whether it's just a few groups of friends. Regardless of what date you're doing it on in terms of the Babylonian or Gregorian calendar, doesn't matter, because you do it to the best of your ability as to when the 14th day of the first biblical month is. And again, the examination of the heart is what is key at that time. Renewing that covenant, the heart needs to be grateful. The heart needs to be humble that it has been chosen. You have been chosen by the Most High to receive this free gift. All you have to do is accept it and be thankful for it. And that's where that examination process starts. And when that examination process starts, what is so good about it is that it also allows you to judge yourself, if you will. The scripture says that if you judge yourself, then you need not be judged. And it's important to judge yourself in terms of thinking about your life. And since the last time you made that renewed covenant, a year previous, if that was when you last kept Passover, or if it's the first one that you're keeping, just thinking about what it is that you as a person can do more of. I always look at it like stop, start, and continue. What do you need to stop doing? What are things that you've been convicted of within yourself that you believe you need to stop doing? What are things that you need to start doing? Start doing in terms of, you may need to spread the gifts that the Most High has given you, whatever they are, more. So you need to start doing that, or you need to be more of an encouragement to other people, or you need to be more edifying, whatever it might be. And what do you need to continue doing? What things are you doing well that you need to continue doing? What things are adding value to the body of believers? Because that's what it's all about. Everybody has been given something. Everybody has a gift. Everybody has a talent, whatever it is. And when we come to that season, these are the things we should be looking at as to how we can further the Most High's kingdom, how we can get the true message of what he has asked his followers, his believers to deliver, how we can get that out. And that comes in many ways. There's not one particular way that will come out. It comes out in many ways. As I always say, it's not everybody that makes YouTube videos. It's not everybody that goes on the street preaching. Sometimes your gift is just by edifying somebody else. And that can go a long way. You should never underestimate the gift or the ability that you have. But the key is, how are you using those things? So when it's that season, these are all things that you can use to examine yourself. And believe me, when somebody examines themselves in truth and humility, I believe that the Most High, as it says in the scripture, doesn't need to do that for you. He doesn't need to double jeopardy and go over it and beat you up with a stick, because you've already gone through with a fine tooth comb how you feel about yourself. And you know that there's needs for improvement. There are things that you need to stop doing. There are things you need to start doing, and things you need to continue to do. And these are the way that we can prepare ourselves as we lead up to this particular time. So I think it's important for everybody to have that approach when we enter this season, and that will allow us to cover many other things which are important for us going forward, especially in the times that we're living in. So let me just have another quick look at the comments. And thank you all, by the way, for those who have joined later. Some of these comments, for some reason, my comments keep disappearing off my screen. Where are we? Right. Always good to try and do a fast before Passover to draw closer to the Most High. That's a very good point. I like that. I agree, Kimberly. It's always important to prepare our hearts and minds and spiritually, not just deleaven our homes, but what we need to cleanse within ourselves. And yeah, you're totally right. It's another way of examining yourself and doing the whole stop, start, and continue. Fasting is always a good way to bring yourself back to earth, if you will, to reality, and humble yourself before the Most High. And fasting is not only just fasting of physical food. It could also be worldly pleasures as well, to cleanse your mind of those things for that period, so that you can get in the Most High's presence and receive from him whatever it is that you need to receive. So I think that preparation is very important and helpful when you're leading up to that time. The physical activity of deleavening your homes, which the Yasharelites were instructed to do in ancient times, that is just a reminder for you to know that you have to make a physical effort to get these things out of your life. And that's how it would translate in the spiritual realm, that you also have to make an effort to stop, start, and continue whatever it is that you need to do. So those are quite important things to remember and to practice doing, because I think it gives you a good preparation to then enter into that feast with confidence that your renewed covenant is all good and accepted by the Most High, and then you are set up to go forward for the rest of the year, the biblical year, I mean. So yeah, that is very very important. And also with Passover, I think another thing is that although it is the first feast that starts the feast of the Most High in Leviticus 23, it very swiftly is followed by, as I said, unleavened bread and first fruits. And these feasts also prepare you for the other festivals that take place later on, i.e. Pentecost, Shavuot, etc. So preparation is always key at the beginning of the season. And that's why I like that comment about, you can go into a fast before you actually get to the Passover itself, because it helps you to prepare the same way as de-leavening physically is your physical reminder to spiritually prepare from de-leavening also, using the stop, start and continue technique, because that's something that I think works for me. Because sometimes we can be a bit hard on ourselves and we can say, I haven't met the standard, and none of us will meet the standard. We never do. But sometimes you can look at all your faults and your points that you need to do better on, and it can be a lot, and you don't actually recognize the things you are doing, because there are things that each and every person does well, and that the Most High would be pleased of if he was to give you an appraisal. But it's important to recognize those things where there are people that have the gift of edification and they edify so much, but they don't recognize it as a gift. They just think that it's just what you should do. And of course it is, but not everybody is able. So I think stop, start and continue is a really good technique to be able to cover off the different areas of things that you need to do more of, that you need to stop doing, or that you need to continue doing. It's a good reminder, good way to prepare your heart and mind. So we've discussed what Passover is, how it affects us, what it means to us, and how we should keep it or celebrate it depending on the circumstance that we're in. It doesn't matter how big or how small you make it, because everyone is in their own unique circumstance. And if you are on your own and your heart is right with the Most High, you can still honor him by keeping it in the best way you can on your own. I believe he will honor it. I know when I did that back in 2020, the overwhelming feeling I got was that you did what you could, and that was good. I had a feeling of peace when I did it, rather than, do you know what, I can't do it because there's no one around, because I'm on lockdown, I'll just skip it for this year. No, I think the Most High honors you by your intentions of the heart. And maybe if the Most High wills, I will do a teaching on intentions, because the Most High gave me some revelation about the intentions of man's heart and how he operates with your intention, not necessarily what you've done, but the intention behind it, which was quite a revealing message to me. But that's for another day. So we talked about Passover, what it is, what it means, how we keep it. We've talked about when we keep it, 14th day of the first biblical month. Don't get too caught up on the dates, because we know that the dates in the Gregorian and Babylonian Julian calendar, whichever one it is, they're all mixed up and so on and so forth. So forget about that. But we do it to the best of our ability as to the 14th day of the first biblical month with our group, whoever that group is, and we celebrate. And if we've got some food to break bread with, we do so. We rejoice, but also remembering the severity and seriousness of that event. And then we start to think now about going forward. What does that mean? Now, we know back in Exodus chapter 12 that after they kept the Passover, they left Mitzrayim, or Egypt, that night so that they could exodus. And as I've said, the things that happened in the past are the things that we expect, according to biblical understanding, that will happen in the future. Now, they may not be in the exact same way, because it's not the method that has to be repeated, it's the outcome. And the outcome is what is always key. So we know that after Passover, people exited their captivity and went on their journey to the wilderness. And if we believe in the second Exodus, which we should, because it's biblical, it's scriptural, And if we understand that that has not yet happened, it was not in 1948 or 1967, it has not happened because the Most High Yah has not yet regathered his true seed of Yasharel. But if we understand that that did happen at this appointed time in the past, we expect to see it happen at some time in the future. We also understand that there were various judgments that the Egyptians fell under because of them holding captive Yah's people. And therefore, we know that in the future, when Yah is going to exodus his people, his true seed, back to their lands, back to the separated part, the wilderness, we also should understand that he will do the same thing, that there will be a judgment on those that have held his people captive. And that judgment begins in Amos chapter 8, because Amos chapter 8 talks about darkness coming over the earth at noon. And when the darkness comes over the earth at noon, although Amos 8 does not talk about the length of time, we understand from the past lessons that that darkness will be for 3 days. And obviously 3 nights. It will be for a solid 72 hours. So we don't know when, but we know the season. And if we know the season, then we are able to prepare for when that season comes, when that season gets to the place where we know that it takes place around the Passover season. So first we prepare for Passover, because that is the event that gets us ready spiritually to then prepare for the potential of that year being the year that the Most High's judgment will come on this earth. So as I said at the beginning, there are a few ministries and a few people that have had various dreams and visions about things that they've seen. And you have to take these things with a pinch of salt sometimes, because not everybody interprets their dreams, or even if people interpret them, not everybody is able to fully kind of know what the meanings are, or is it personal, is it collective, and all those things. However, sometimes you look at these things, and when they're coming from different sources, and you look at what's going on in the world at this moment in time, there was 1 or 2 events I saw today on news feeds that made me raise my eyebrow. You start to consider whether you are, you're in the season, but you start to consider whether or not you are in the year. And nobody knows that. But you and I would be foolish if we knew all these things and we approached the season, but just because we couldn't see it happen and we said, well, I don't even think it's this year, I think it's next year or in 2 years' time, so I'm not going to prepare. If we did something like that, we would be caught unawares, and it would be our own fault, because the information is in the word. We know what is going to happen according to the prophecies, according to the biblical patterns, and according to the revealer of all truth, the Ruach, who gives us the revelation of things that are going to come. So we are in the Passover season, therefore we should be understanding that we are also in the Amos chapter 8 season. And whether it's going to happen this year or not, at this stage doesn't really matter. But what does matter is the fact that if we're preparing for Passover, we should be preparing for that time. Now, with the 3 days of darkness, we understand that this was a judgment, or this in the past, in Exodus chapter 10, when the 3 days of darkness happened, we should understand that this was a judgment for Egypt because they held Yah's people captive, and it was limited to Egypt. In the future times, this is a judgment for the world because Yah's people are scattered throughout the world. So the judgment will be for the world. So therefore, how do we prepare for such an event? Because if we prepare and nothing happens, how do we make sure that that preparation doesn't go to waste? So I want to start from a physical perspective first, because there are only a few things you can do physically. Physically, if you're preparing for that event during the 3 days of darkness, you would be in your dwelling place. And if you're going to be in your dwelling place, you would be there with your family. So you would have that arranged that your family would be in your dwelling place at the appropriate time. Now, as I said, nobody knows when Passover actually is according to the Babylonian calendar, but we do know when the pagan feast days are, because they are in sync with their calendar. So when we know that that pagan first feast day, because remember Amos chapter 8, and in fact, just for clarity's sake, let me read it, because it's important to just fully get that understanding. In fact, before I read Amos 8, that's a good point. Let me read Isaiah 26. Because somebody asked me before why, where were the instructions that we should stay in our dwelling place, because it says that the Asherites had light in their dwelling place, but where were the instruction? And I said that Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 20 says, "Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut the door about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, Yah have come out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. So come, my people, enter into thy chambers, and shut the door about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast." Now, as I always say, scripture does have multiple layers, and it fulfills things in multiple times, or in different seasons. So let's not just assume that scripture is in relation to one thing, and that's just the 3 days of darkness. No, it does have other meanings, and you can correlate that also with the book of Job. But with regards to that instruction, that is giving us clear and direct instruction that it's literal. We should enter into our chambers, or enter into our homes, our houses, and we should shut the door behind us, as it were, for a little while, until the judgment, the indignation has passed. Now, when the 3 days of darkness happens, it will not be a plague that happens instantly, i.e., 1 minute it's light and the next minute it's dark. No. If you read what happened in the account in Exodus chapter 10, it says the darkness fell. When Moshe lifted his hand, as the Most High says, "Stretch out your hand and darkness will fall over the land," it means that this darkness began to descend on the land. So it didn't go from being a clear day within 1 minute to being dark. No, it was a gradual thing that began to happen, but the darkness would fall at noon. So if we know when the pagan seasons are and the pagan feast days are, we should be observing how the day feels, how the atmosphere is, and we will start to see these signs. And prior to this, we have to be prepared. As I said, from a physical perspective, the preparation would be to make sure that you are going to be able to be occupied in your house without having to go out. So you've got food, so you've got water. And when I talk about food, I'm talking about non-perishable food. You need to make sure that you factor in things that, for example, during the 3 days of darkness, there will be no power, hence why there's darkness. You won't be able to use cooking facilities or heating facilities, or you won't have running water, because these things all rely on power, maybe not necessarily here, but at source, the power that is needed for them to be pumped, for example, water through the pipes and the tap system, that will not be in effect. So you have to prepare yourself as best you can for you and your family, or those who are going to be in your dwelling. That's to do with the food, that's to do with the water. You have to know that you're not going to be able to cook. So you need food that can sustain you during that period, that doesn't have to be cooked, or you need food that you've already cooked from before. And bear in mind, you won't have power, so that food can't be kept in the fridge or preserved. These are all things you have to think about from a practical perspective. In addition, you also have to understand that water would not only be used for drinking. Now, if you think about, if you live in a household with 4 people, and you are unable for 3 days to go outside, and you don't have taps, water running through your taps, you have to think about things like sanitation. How are you going to be clean? How are you going to be hygienic? What will you do? You will need to have water available for being able to flush your toilets, or water for you to freshen up, or whatever the case may be during that period. And sometimes you might look at these things as thinking, well, no one would be thinking about that during that time. But believe me, if that happened and you were in that position without those facilities, you can see how quickly it would change your mood and move you out of your place of comfort. Because during that time, from a spiritual perspective, you should be in comfort. And I'm going to talk about the spiritual side of it in a moment. But if you allow things in the physical to move you out of your spiritual place of comfort, that could be quite detrimental. We have to learn the lessons of our ancestors. One of their attributes was they were very ungrateful. They were very much about the flesh. And let's not be wise to think that we are going to be any different if we are not spiritually prepared. Because the flesh can rise up, and the flesh can cause you to start in your heart, or in your head, or out of your mouth, being ungrateful and saying things that shouldn't be said. Now, I just thought of a scenario this morning whilst I was thinking about some of these things, that imagine if you didn't have any water to flush your toilets, and you had a household of 4. Let's say you had one toilet, and that toilet had been used, and you've gone a day now without being able to flush it and dispose of it. You may start to hate the situation. You may start to feel very aggrieved that you're having to go through this situation, having to go through this scenario. And not only you, but other people in your family or in your household. It may start to cause contention between people. It may start to cause arguments and not feeling, in that place of safety from a spiritual perspective, which is where we should be during that time. So just by doing small preparation, by having food, by having water to flush, things to dispose of if you need. Remember, you can't go outside, so you have to take all these things into consideration. That having those small comforts or small preparation can help you to stay in the place of harmony with your fellow family members, or the people of your household, because you don't want to move yourself away from that feeling of being grateful that the Most High is keeping you in this confinement. He's keeping you safe. Because one of the things that did happen back in the day is a lot of those Yasharelites were mumbling and grumbling and complaining about trivial things, that they had no meat, that they had no water, that they should have stayed in Mitzrayim because there was plenty to eat. They started complaining and murmuring at Moshe and basically the Most High. And that was a grievous sin, considering that they had just been freed from slavery and oppression. So let's not think or be wise to think that we are better than them and that we wouldn't do those things. Because sometimes when you're in a situation that is a bit uncomfortable, it can change your mindset. But if you prepare physically, then you can limit those things from happening from a physical perspective because you'll be prepared for that event. I don't know if I'm making sense or if that is kind of clear, but the physical preparation is just to make that period as comfortable as it can be without you having to then be dissatisfied with the situation that you're in. As I say, the human flesh can rise up. So I want you to just think about that. These are some of the things that you need to take into consideration physically. There's an element of also having maybe candles. I don't believe electrical items would work, but there's an element of having candles and these things available. Now, whether they would work during that time, as in candlelight, whether that would work, I don't know. But what I do know is that if you buy them and have them prepared and you have matches to hand, it hurts nobody if they don't work. It hurts nobody if nothing happens and that day doesn't come, because they will just preserve and be kept for another time. But these are important things to take into consideration. And the physical preparation also shows the Most High that you're taking his word seriously, that you're not leaving it to chance, that you're not saying, I don't believe. You're saying, well, I do believe, so I'm doing what I can. And should things not happen, it doesn't matter because I know one day it will happen. So I think the physical preparation shows an element of your faith. Now, some may say, but I could just be spiritual and just believe in the Most High anyway, and he will keep me during that time. And yes, if your faith is at that point and that's what you're led to do, so be it. But I also believe that the Most High meets us at the point of where our faith is. And if we are diligent in the small things, then he knows that we'll be diligent in the bigger things. So he will also honor us in that regard. But physical preparation to a degree is important. And if nothing happens, your water can stay where it is or can go back where it was. It's not going to expire. You're going to use it. You're going to drink it. If it's waste water that you've kept, like tap water that you've just kept in containers and nothing happens and the day passes or the period passes, you can just pour it into the sink. Like, you haven't lost anything. But to not prepare would not be wise. As it says, that if you fail to prepare, you will prepare to fail. And you have to have that motto when you are approaching these things. You know, that's how you've got to look at it. If I fail to prepare, then I better prepare to fail, because that's how it's going to work out when all is said and done. So the spiritual preparation now is key. We've looked at the physical, water, food, waste disposal, wastewater, light, candlelight, all of those sort of things. Have them to hand. Make sure your family know what is happening. Make sure that you're observing the day, knowing that the darkness will fall and not just suddenly just hit, but you're knowing that the darkness will fall at noon. Noon, we don't know, there's time zones everywhere, but don't get too caught up with that. Just think about noon where you are at the time, because the Most High has a way of making things work out. So just remember that. Those are the physical bits you can prepare. In fact, before I go into the spiritual, let me just have a quick read through the comments, because there's quite a few gems in here that I saw. Oh, wow, quite a lot of stuff. Okay. Do not leave your house. Do not leave your house for absolutely no one. Okay. Yep. Do not leave your house. I prepared with food and water, covering also candles. That's good. Just be prepared every day with prayers. Yes, I agree. Um, you'll need food for more than 3 days. Please consider the aftermath. Yes, that's a very good point. But also consider that the 3 days of darkness is the catalyst for end time events according to my biblical understanding. So if you understand what happened after the 3 days of darkness, then you may not even be around thereafter, because if the 3 days of darkness happened, in my mind, the second Exodus is going to then occur shortly after. But it would be wise to have preparation longer than that. I would agree with that. Um, my first dream: stand on the roof of my car and tell the people to repent. Okay, some dreams. I'll come back to these and have a read through those. Have extra plastic bags to dispose. Yes, I agree with that. And maybe even like a bucket with or a big container with a cover that you can put things in and cover it. That needs to be disposed. Yep, I had to quickly shut the door, tell everyone who was inside not to open the door. Yes. Okay. So a lot of comments amongst yourself. These are some good comments. Do not open the door. Think of your house as the ark. Very good point. Okay. Thank you all for your comments so far. Very good. Loving the interaction between you all, and I'll read them all again. Obviously, once the stream is over, I always go through the comments and read them and reply on the replay if it's needed. So the physical side of preparation is literally what you guys are discussing in the chat room and what I've mentioned. Let's talk about the spiritual side. Because understand that the 3 days of darkness is a judgment. It's a judgment for the world, and it's also an examination for Yasharel, an examination of the Most High's believers. And if we saw the studies we did on the second Exodus and 3 days of darkness, especially part 2, it shows you that in the ancient times, that darkness fell on the 10th day of the first biblical month, which is when they are instructed to take a lamb and inspect it for 4 days. So there will be some kind of inspection, examination of your faith. And my understanding is that the examination will pretty much be, where is your standing with the Most High? Do you trust him? Do you believe in him? Do you believe in his prophecies? Do you believe in his word? Do you believe in the revelation he has given you personally? Do you believe in the revelation he may have given others that he has led you to? Do you believe in all these things, testing them, always testing them by the word, taking them back to him? Do not despise prophecy. If you hear something that sounds off, look it up in the word. If the word disproves it, push it out. But if the word doesn't disprove it, take it to the Most High in prayer. Ask him, is this true? Confirm it to me. Show me that this is true, or is this a lie? Tell me, like, where is your relationship with the Most High? The spiritual preparation is about that. Are you in the right standing with the Most High? Are you in humility, knowing that it is not you that are able to do anything and keep yourself, that it is him that is able to keep you, that without him you can do nothing? These are all part of the spiritual preparation that every believer needs to have when he or she is approaching the Most High. And the first thing starts with the humility, the knowing factor that it is only by his grace that you are able to have a relationship with him. It's only by his grace that you are kept, that you are still alive, still breathing, still free moral agent. So When we are preparing spiritually, we have to get ourselves in that place where we are confident in the status of our relationship. Now, if we have just kept the Passover a few days before this, or whenever you're keeping it, but around that season, then you should have already done this examination. So already the Most High has already made a way for you to actually be in sync, in line with Him, because you've already done your examination. So now it's more about your faith. Are you secure that He is going to keep you safe? Are you in full understanding and belief that He is your refuge and your strength? And you know what? It's very easy to say these things now when we're sitting in comfort, when we're sitting in our houses in warmth, when there's no destruction outside. It's very easy to say it now. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this at you, I'm saying it to us all, including myself. It's easy for me to say all these things now. But what will happen when you can hear howling and wailing outside? What will happen when you know that outside is some form of destruction that you can't see and don't want to see? How will your heart react? Luke 21 says that men's heart will fail with fear, looking after the things that are coming on the earth. I think it's around verse 34, um, around there. Luke 21:34. Men's hearts will fail. Why? Because they are not prepared, because their hearts are not expecting these things, because it came upon them as a snare or as a trap, as it says in Luke 21:35. These things are things that we should not be caught out by, because we should spiritually be prepared. Now, I read Isaiah 26 and 20 and 21 earlier, but if we read the beginning of Isaiah chapter 26, let me read from verse 1. In that day shall this song be sung in the land of Yehuda. We have a strong city. Salvation will Yah appoint for walls and bulwarks. Open ye the gates, that the righteous nation which keepeth the truth may enter in. Thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusts in thee. Trust in Yah forever, for in Yah is everlasting strength. Verse 3, I read again. Thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Think about that. You will be kept in peace, perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on them. Because if you trust him, then your mind will be stayed on him. You will continue to think about him, even during the calamitous times on things going out around you. You won't be worried about that. You keep your mind stayed on him, and then you will be kept in perfect peace. And that's what we have to do during that period. We have to keep our minds stayed on him, so that we will be in perfect peace. So despite the calamities around us, we have to have the mindset of Messiah. When Messiah was on that boat, he was sleeping in harmony, and there was a supernatural storm that came, that even these seasoned fishermen, being the disciples who were, seen it all, seen every kind of weather storm that could ever happen, but they were terrified because of the supernatural storm. And Messiah was sleeping, head on a pillow, like a baby. He was in perfect peace. Why? Because his mind is always stayed on the Most High. He trusted in him. He knew that he was safe. He wasn't moved by his surroundings and the storms that were going on outside. We, during that time, have to be the same. And it's not going to happen by clicking your fingers all of a sudden on that day. You're going to have to prepare your heart beforehand, that you know these things are coming, so that when they do come, you're not surprised, you're not shocked, you're not in fear, you're not in panic, you're not thinking, I've got no food, what am I going to do? No, you've taken care of all the physical stuff. And the spiritual stuff is that you're not relying on yourself for deliverance. You know that the Most High has made you promises. you know that he has promised to keep you in perfect peace if your mind is stayed on him because you trust in him. So these are the things that we have to prepare ourselves. We should not be in fear. He did not give us that spirit of fear. We should have that spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. We should know that the Most High is definitely keeping his promises. And if anything, if that takes place and we are in that spiritual place of peace and rest, we should also have a spiritual excitement and anticipation of what is to come. Because after that event, although there will be destruction and a lot of calamities everywhere, as it says in Amos chapter 8. I did say I was going to read that chapter. Let me go there. As it says that when we keep ourselves in that position, we are going to know that the Most High is going to do something miraculous after that. And if we understand the prophecies in terms of what we've talked about before, we know that the second Exodus is on the horizon after that event. And that is something that every believer of Yasharel and every believer of the Ecclesia should be looking forward to, because Babylon has fallen. Babylon has fallen. And who wants to be in Babylon? So we should be in that place of comfort and safety, knowing that the Most High is going to deliver us after that event. Amos chapter 8, verse, I'll just read the verses 9 through to, 9 through to 11, I'll read. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith Yah thy Allah, that I will cause the sun to go down at noon, to go down. Let's remember what it says, cause the sun to go down at noon. So that's when we will know that the darkness is falling. And I will darken the earth in the clear day. If we wake up and see it's a very clear day around that time, be alert, be on alert. And I will turn your feasts into mourning and all your songs into lamentations. And I will bring up sackcloth upon all loins and baldness upon every head. And I will make it as the morning of an only son, and the end thereof as a bitter day. Behold, the days come, saith Yah thy Allah, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor of thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yah. So you see, this event comes with calamity. It's not just what happens during the 3 days of darkness, which calamity will strike. It's what happens after, when the sun comes back up and the light returns to the earth, and the destruction that will be seen. It will cause every end time event it will start the clock of those end time events, because never before has the world seen a judgment like that. And it is a judgment, so that means there will be, dead bodies piled up, as the scripture says. I don't think I read that part, but it talks about there being dead bodies piled up everywhere. Where are we? Yes, sorry. So if we see where it says about turn your feasts into mourning, your songs into lamentation, bring up sackcloth upon loins and baldness upon every head, I'll make it as the morning of an only son, and the end thereof a bitter day. Behold, the days come, saith Yada Allah, send the famine of the word. Sorry, verse 3. And the songs of the temple shall be howlings in that day, saith Yada Allah. There shall be many dead bodies in every place. They shall cast them forth with silence. I didn't read that far in verse 3. So yeah, there is going to be calamity when this event happens, during it, but you won't be able to see it because you're inside. But when the darkness um, goes and the light returns, there will be destruction and it will be chaotic, and that will be the beginning of the end time events. Never have those things been seen, but we also know that the deliverance will be drawing nigh when this happens. So it should be an exciting time. As weird as that might sound, it should be an exciting time because you know that, wow, prophecy is being fulfilled in this day and age. And that means I'm part of this prophecy. And I know that the Most High's promises that He has made to exodus His people out of the Babylonian system and land will come to pass. So, spiritually, when we're preparing, we should be in a place where we have a level of excitement and a level of comfort that the Most High will keep us, and a level of being calm and knowing that what it says in Psalm 23, that even though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you will fear no evil. Death is all around you. You'll be in your chamber, but death will be all around you. This is a judgment of a spiritual proportions. And that is why there will be death, because there will be spiritual forces not of Yah that have been released on the earth during that period, and they will cause carnage and destruction. But if you know who is your deliverer, you should not be panicked and you should not be worried. And that's where the examination will come, and that's where the preparation spiritually is going to be key. That we get ourselves in that place of safety now, that we start meditating on these things, we start examining our relationship with the Most High. We've done our Passover, we've renewed our covenant, and now we are entering into a place of safety, a place of spiritual sanctification with the Most High, because we know that the promises He has made are relevant to us and our families. So the spiritual preparation is, again, mentioned before, the same way you can prepare for Passover with a fast beforehand. You could also do the same thing for this particular time. You can be prepared spiritually in terms of, okay, it says the Yasharites had light in their dwellings in that time, and we don't know how that light will be. Is it a form of a physical light or is it supernatural? We don't know. But let's just imagine, for whatever reason, you didn't have light, or let's just imagine for whatever reason I mean, we should all have physical Bibles, but let's just say you didn't have a physical Bible and you relied on your digital Bible, and your digital Bible wouldn't work because electronics won't work during that time. How will you read the word? How will you have the understanding? How will you be able to renew your strength and to strengthen yourself by reading the scriptures? You won't be able to. So think about having some scriptures in your mind to hand, to learning those scriptures off the top of your head. I mentioned on one of my videos that I want to learn Psalm 91 from start to finish. I don't know all of it. I know some of it, but not all. And I know there are people that do know it. And that, I believe, is brilliant, because that Psalm 91, if you study it, if you look at it from start to finish, it is talking about that event. Although King David, under the inspiration of the Ruach HaKodesh, was prophesying something. He was talking about something happening during his time that he went through, a challenge that he went through, and needed that deliverance and strength from the Most High. You read that line by line, you will see he's talking prophetically also about that darkness period. So that is a key psalm. So we need to have some of these things to hand. Physical Bible, great, yes, we can read it, but can we learn them? Can we have them in our head so we can recall on them? We can say them out to ourselves, say them loud to our family, say them as a covering. These are all spiritual preparations that we should be doing. And if we can do these things, we will be in a better place, that when that time comes, that we will not be worried, we will not be frightened or afraid. We will be confident that the Most High is going to deliver us, because we've done our bit, we've done our preparation physically and spiritually, and we are now in right standing and calm about what is going to take place. Although it will be in the natural, a frightening, terrifying experience, but we are operating in the supernatural. So we should have a supernatural level of calmness and just thankfulness that the Most High has kept us by pre-warning us and giving us the knowledge and understanding to be prepared and not to despise prophecy, and that in his mercy he has revealed to us, so we are already one step ahead than every other person. So I hope that is making some kind of sense. It's been on my radar to mention it because we are in that season. And I'm gonna say it again. We don't know if it's gonna happen this year or next year or whenever. We don't know, but we know it is going to happen. And therefore, if we know it's going to happen, we would be foolish not to prepare as if it is going to happen this year. Because if it does happen and we don't prepare, we would have no excuse to say there was no warning, because the warning has already come. But if it doesn't happen, but we're prepared, you can't lose. If you're spiritually prepared and it doesn't happen, it just means your relationship with the Most High is even better. And if you're physically prepared and it doesn't happen, it just means that you're physically prepared for another time or another event. So I really want to stress on these points to make sure that you gird yourself up physically and spiritually, and that of your family. It's not all family that believe, but you can cover them a lot with the actions, the faithful actions you take. That I think is very important. Right, let me spend some time going through the comments very quickly. Quite a lot of comments. So, well, okay. Right, as I say, I will come back and read some of them in a lot more detail once the stream is over. Okay, supernatural light, receive supernatural light from Isaiah chapter 60. That's arise and shine. Yeah, okay. Yes, I mean, it's quite possible. It does appear to be that. Also, as I mentioned before in John 8:12, Yahusha says, I am the light of the world, and those who follow me will not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. So that also is a spiritual reference. David Ben Israel, James 4:17. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and does not, to him it is a sin. Agreed. If you know you should do preparation and you don't, that falls into that category. Grid going down could be blackout, 3 days of darkness. Yes. I mean, that's a good point, Beverly. I do want to mention something that, believe me, the wicked are already planning their escape or their get out of jail card in terms of what to tell everyone has happened during that time. And there were a couple video clips that I was going to actually post, which I may do on the edited video before it gets released, which shows some of the things that they've been planning, because they've been mentioning blackouts for quite a while, worldwide blackouts. So these people know certain things, but don't be overly concerned with those things, because we know the truth. Babylon is definitely fallen. Just heard of a possible major tsunami in the UK, and it reminds me of a dream I had a few years ago of London underwater. Stock up on everything. Stock up everyone on everything. Yep, for sure. Uh, I suggest Yashua to fast during the 3 days of darkness. Use the stored up of food after the darkness passes. I mean, fasting has to be as you are led. It's good to collectively fast, but also it needs to be a spirit led thing. Serious days ahead, family. Too right, Sheriff. Acts 17:30, and the times of this ignorance Yehuda winked at, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent. Hallelujah. Daniel fast. Yeah, you can do a Daniel fast. As I say, do as you were led when it comes to those things. Okay. 3 days of darkness preparation. Okay. There's loads of comments. So, as I said, I'll catch up with some of them after. Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you for all your comments. They are valid, especially when we're talking about ideas and things that can be done at that time from a fasting perspective. Definitely, as you were led, you must do. And collective fasts are good also, but we have to also understand individual circumstances as well. So you must do what you're led. And I believe that these times are basically the Most High having an individual relationship with his people, because each person will be examined as to where that relationship is. So that's why things have to be done from an individual basis. But if you can coordinate it collectively, even better too, because that will have power when two or three or more obviously are in agreement of the same thing. So I think from my point of view, that is kind of what I wanted to cover. It was just on my heart that as we approach the Passover season, although I had done some very in-depth teachings on these particular subjects, and again, I will leave those linked in the description, I just felt that as the time of each day was going past into this new biblical month that we're in, and remember, the new pagan month starts tomorrow, so it's even further urgency, because when the new pagan month starts, that's when their feasts start also in this month of April that will be approaching tomorrow. And I just felt that I should put it on your radar again in terms of preparation for Passover and also preparation for the event of that 3 days of darkness, should it be this year. Not saying it is, nobody knows that, but we would not be wise to prepare. And I really wasn't going to do a message or a teaching as such, but it was more of a discussion and just feeling to put it on people's radar, especially for, those with family who may not have that understanding, and what can we do to try and make sure that they are not caught out. But most of these things have to be done through how the Spirit leads us to do. There's not a one rule fits all, if you will. So it was just on my heart. I needed to put something out, I needed to have some kind of discussion, some kind of reminder that we are now officially in the season of the Passover season and what potentially could come after. So you just have it on your radar and make sure you are prepared spiritually and physically. Both are important, but the spiritual preparation is obviously key, because that's what's going to be examined when it comes to that part. And don't forget about the physical, smaller things that I mentioned as well. Because what you don't want to do is to take yourself away from that place of contentment and comfort by physical things that are causing a distraction. Like I said, if you don't have a way to dispose waste, and it then starts causing you to be agitated and takes you out of that spiritual place. We don't want to be there. We don't want to repeat the lessons of our forefathers, which was just ungratefulness that overtook them. We don't want to be there. So unless anybody has any other question that they want to ask in relation to the topic, I think you've done really well in terms of the discussion in the chat room. I will go through it afterwards. But unless there's any other questions, I think we can end the stream and just say thank you all for joining and your participation and for sharing gems. Keep the channel in prayer, keep myself in prayer, as I do also for you all, because we all need prayer, we all need encouragement. We are in serious times and we are going through something we have never gone through before. You know, should these things happen at this appointed time, we are going through things that we haven't been through. So we need that extra strength and covering from the body of believers, from Yesharel. So keep me in prayer as I will do to you. Please do like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done already. It's important that these teachings, not necessarily this particular message, because as I say, this was more of like a reminder and more just putting it on your radar, but it's important that the teachings with comprehensive understanding using the scriptures go out to people that need them, because it is by faith that people come to believe. How does faith come? It comes by hearing, and hearing the word of Yah. So we have to hear the word in order for us to get faith, in order for us to then believe. And Romans chapter 10 talks very much about that. So that's why I ask you to like, share, and subscribe, and to, you know, really do your best with whoever needs to hear these words. Not specifically this live stream. The live stream wasn't really, like I say, for a teaching purpose. It was just to put things back on people's radar, because we are in the season. It would be irresponsible for me not to mention that, being the fact that I believe the Most High revealed these things to me a while ago. And although I've done the teaching, we have to still continue to sound the alarm. So thank you all for joining. The chat room remains open. Feel free to stay in there and talk, but I'm going to end the live stream. I hope you all have a wonderful Shabbat, and please again do like, share, and subscribe, and get the channel out to as many people as possible, so that they can also heed these warnings. To he who has ears to hear, let him or her hear. Yah bless you all. Still live.